If most days you start reading something or watching a lecture and think, bruh, I do not get any of this. Don't worry, this happens to me a lot as well. Being in med school, there is so much information that is constantly being thrown at you, and a lot of it is conceptually challenging as well. But after a long time, I can confidently say that I've trained my brain to intuitively learn difficult information and then remember it for a long time as well. And in this video, I've shoved my entire mental process for learning difficult things, for learning difficult topics into one nice step-by-step method for you. Enjoy. The main idea to quickly learn difficult things is to have as many of those aha moments, right? Those moments when things just click, when all of the puzzle pieces fit together in the big picture, which only happens after A, you give your brain enough key information, B, after you break everything down as much as possible, and C, you understand the purpose of each of the points that you're learning super well. Another key idea is effort. You need to put as much effort as possible into the learning for your brain to deem this topic as important. And the last main idea is that this method takes time. It isn't super easy to do in every single circumstance, but you have to adapt and start somewhere. So let's get into it. Step 1, the big picture magic. I've genuinely noticed such a huge difference between the times that I've straight away jumped into reading the chapter from the first line versus the times where I've put in the effort to skim. When I've gone through the prerequisites, when I've read about the basics first to then build a big picture of the key concept. I honestly cannot emphasize this enough. Don't be lazy and impatient, just do these first steps before starting. To comfortably tackle hard topics, you need to understand what's going on with the concept first. Why is the specific mechanism I'm learning even important? Otherwise, literally you'll think, bro, why does this even matter? Why am I putting in so much effort to learn this difficult topic? It will even come up in the exams. And so practically part 1 of this step is to find the purpose of this topic or concept. And you can do this very quickly if you do that initial skimming. When you take time to understand the broader concept before jumping straight into the details. Details don't matter right now. It's a hard topic. Details will just get you bogged down and confused. Your mission is to understand the purpose of this process, the purpose of this problem. What is it for? Why does it happen? Why is it important? Treat the concept and all of its details as if it was inside Hermione's infinity bag in Harry Potter.
Undetectable extension charm.
It could have an endless amount of complicated things in there, but your job isn't to go rooting around, shuffling through the details, picking them up and trying to learn them. It's to figure out the categories of the types of things within that bag. What do those categories tell you about the purpose of the overall concept? What is this complicated, difficult process trying to solve? Simply put, start by creating a simple explanation for this difficult concept. We don't know how any of it works, we just care about why it's important. Part 2 of this step is to create passion. Once you have that general idea, its importance, that's when you need to contextualize it to something in your life or something that interests you. You don't need to become some passionate expert. It is not passion! But you have to give a crap about why this matters. It just makes learning each and every individual piece of information later on much easier. Your brain will subconsciously start to think about the concept more and more, even when you aren't working. You'll start noticing things that remind you of that difficult problem that you tried to solve. And also it'll help you remember it for longer. And if you don't care about this topic, if the exam's far away, there's no chance that you can create any interest in it, then become egotistical. How can this random topic that some random guy discovered beat me? How can something that so many others have learned before actually stump me? How can I not understand this? I'm better than this. Do whatever you need to do to find that drive to push yourself to learn. Quick pause before we get into the next step. Could I please ask you to like the video, leave a few comments, help me out with the algorithm, and let's get right back into it. Step 2, pull singular points out of the abstract. So far, you found the purpose and the overall basic idea of the concept, and hopefully you started to care about it a little as well. Now that you have the bigger picture, we can start to go through each and every one of those key points, the details, picking them out of Hermione's bag and thinking about how each and every one of these steps or details links to the overall big concept. Breaking each of these points down as much as possible and thinking, where in my mental model of this topic does this point fit in? That's the overall idea of this step. Let's get into how we could practically make it work. The first part of this step is to assume everything works and then break it down. You start by assuming that everything in this puzzle that you're building works perfectly, that everything in the concept works together and all the information is accurate. Become less curious. for now. Because if you start to think too deeply about each of the steps and question them too much, then it'll be much harder to make sense of and accept all the complicated details. It'll just slow you down. So even if you don't know exactly how everything that you're learning fits in together, try and understand how each one of those things that you're learning fits in with your bigger picture, with that mental model of the concept. You're slowly pulling the details out of Hermione's bag and adding those puzzle pieces to your big picture. And the more you do this, the more you try and fit in these random details into this mental model that you're building, the longer that you'll remember whatever you're learning for. Now, obviously, go into the details of something if you don't understand how this thing fits in at all, if you can't understand why this step even happens. But don't do it too much. Remember, we're breaking each step down to its core and taking it in one by one. Always intuitively think about what this piece of information is and what it tries to accomplish. Next, hypothesize your own points using this intuition. Practically, this is the most important step for me. To give context, intuition means to instinctively try and understand something without thinking much about it. If I say 10 plus 10, that's immediate, 21. Intuitive. No working out needed. And in order to actually get to that point, my suggestion is not to read all of the details immediately, and instead create your own details. What this means is that if you're reading about a specific process, actively think, okay, what would step 1 of this process be? How would it progress? You already know this concept's purpose. You already know the basics. So using this pre-existing knowledge, can I posit a hypothesis of what the details and the specifics of this concept would look like? For example, if you know the disease that you're working on is cystic fibrosis, you know that it causes issues with membrane transport, that there's thick mucus produced. Now think, where could a ton of extra mucus cause a problem? Immediately, without even reading anything, you can go through your body and recognize, oh, this could cause an issue in the gut lining. I may not be able to absorb food properly, or this could cause an issue in the lungs. I may not be able to breathe. And you can keep going through the body and figuring this out, but you've done all of this without even reading any of the details. And this same thought process can be used and applied to most other concepts in the world as well. All you're doing is reverse engineering your solution to this problem that you kind of understand, or at least you're trying to hypothesize what could happen in this concept. It's active, and we all know that the more effort you put into the learning, the more it'll be absorbed in your brain and the longer you'll be able to remember. But interestingly, putting effort does more than that. The more you think about this problem, the more you're giving a chance to your brain to unconsciously work on it and understand it. It's like when you get into a heated argument and 15 hours later you think of a sick comeback. That was your unconscious brain thinking and processing without you even realizing. And it only did that because it thought you cared about the argument. So put in the active effort, make your conscious brain work, and your unconscious brain will give it importance and help you out. And part 3 of this step is to check and then process the information. Now is when you can go and read through in layers all the points in this chapter. Check if you are right with the points that you thought about or the hypothesis that you had. If you are right, then great. Keep reinforcing and building on what you thought. If not, then figure out why your initial thought process when you didn't know the details was different. What gap did you have? What thing did you think about differently? What were you missing? Or were you just completely off track? Either way, that creating the points process, hypothesizing, all of it will be extremely beneficial to you now when you're sitting and reading through the concepts. Because now is when you actually sit down and try and process the information. Going through it, trying out a few practice questions, or preferably creating your own questions to then test yourself on. Overall, continue to one by one going through all the points. It doesn't matter what order you specifically go through stuff in, your brain might automatically want to go to the second bit of the chapter and learn from there because it wanted to fill in that mental gap that it had. It doesn't matter as long as you're slowly building your knowledge of this difficult concept. But because we've already done the step of priming our brain, actively using it to understand the big picture, we've hypothesized about the points that could come up. Going through this information, all of it will be a lot easier now. But we're not done yet. All we've done is understood and processed this concept. Yes, it sounded like a lot, but once you get used to it and start using this method, you will be so fast at understanding any difficult concept that you actually come across. But to truly learn this concept, we have to also strengthen and remember it as well. And that's the third step. We can immediately start to do things to strengthen and remember that concept in that very first or second session of studying. The things in this step will only take an extra 20 or 30 minutes, but it'll heavily increase your ability to remember and then apply that topic in your exams. And there's 2 parts to this. The first one is to deepen the knowledge with teaching. It starts by writing down the topic on top of the piece of paper and then explaining it to yourself, showing how you would work through it as if you were teaching someone else. Or teaching a class, literally speak out loud, Feynman's technique. Especially if this topic took you so long and to understand and capture already, you need to see if you can put this difficult concept that you've already taken so much time to learn into simple words. It's really beneficial because naturally it'll show you what you don't understand, but throughout this process you'll deepen and engage with the knowledge and look at it through a different lens while you explain it. I can't emphasize doing it enough with difficult concepts. It'll literally take 15 to 20 minutes to do this, and you've already spent so much time trying to understand this difficult concept, so why not cement it? Put the extra bit of effort in to save yourself so much time in the future. The thing is, if you're really struggling with a difficult concept, if you're taking too much time to understand it, even after doing the steps in this video, then do this teaching while you're reading it. Not the note-taking aspect where you just read the sentence and take notes on it, but more of doing a meta explanation on a paragraph that you just read. Okay, I've just read through this paragraph. This is what it's trying to say in 2 lines. This is how it links to the overall concept, and this is why it's important. It will be effortful and very time consuming, but it's also very effective to slow down and go through each mini concept or mini topic and then talk about it and write it down while you're teaching it, as if you're teaching a class. Part 3, practice, practice, practice. The last part is practice and applying the knowledge. And by no means do I actually mean that you should leave this step to the end. You should constantly be trying to apply the knowledge that you read in your head. You should be continuously thinking about examples, about analogies, about ways that you could link this new information to what you already know. Always think about what you're missing from the big picture puzzle right now. Is this intuitive learning you need to do with your studying to actually make things stick? But practically speaking, doing practice questions just simply gives you context. Because yes, sometimes a topic is difficult because of the actual complexity, but sometimes you just don't know how it's going to be applied. So if the topic is difficult, you're kind of understanding it, you're trying to talk yourself through it, that's fine, that's good. That's what the initial 80% of the learning is. But 20% is now going and doing those 20 MCQs or 10 problem questions. Even in the beginning, practicing is very important, even if you don't know anything well, because that'll immediately tell you how all of this information that you're learning is actually important. What does the examiner want you to know, etc. And then as you get better, as you go through the nuances, the more your ability to solve the questions and answer the MCQs will actually increase throughout the study sessions. Anyways, if you like this video but want a more specific study method on how you can get through a good group of topics all in a few hours, then check this video out. I go through every single thing I think about, everything that I do, every study technique that I actually use in a 4-hour study cycle. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, spam the comments, help me out with the algorithm. I really hope this has helped, and I will see you in the next one.